Uh, from the first, from the left.
السلام عليكم دكتور.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله, Mr. Agil.
Sorry, Doctor, the mic just now active. Sorry for
Okay.
that. Thanks, Doctor. Thanks, Doctor.
So risk management plan is such this item, some of these items, or all of these items. On the left bottom, left top, risk strategy. After that, methodology such as tools and techniques and data sources. After that, rules and responsibilities. And the next one, timing. That means when and how often about any risk, occurrence and risk. And next one, risk breakdown structure, RBS, in suitable levels, 3 or 4 levels. Next one, a stakeholder risk appetite. And after the definition of probability and impact or effect, we discussed that we must make a standard for probabilities and effects of risk in our project, in our risk management. And next one, the next item is risk register and risk report formats. We make an internal standard in our project. And the last one is tracking and auditing, or control and monitor method about any risk after implementation of risk responses. Okay. And about risk identification tools and techniques. Risk is about the objective of the project in the rectangle of time, cost, and scope. And some sources of risk are internal in our project, and some sources are external in our project. For example, global economy, global events such as coronavirus in the world, and other sources of some risk. So risk identification tools and techniques are such as, first one, expert judgment. Next one, data gathering, such as with some methods such as brainstorming, checklist, and interviews. And the next tool and technique is the data analysis, such as root cause analysis. It's very important and useful. Assumption and constraint. Assumption and constraint analysis about the causes of the risk, and SWOT analysis, opportunity and threats. And the last one about data analysis is document and contract analysis in our project. Okay. And this is an example for cause-effect diagram. In the box at the top of the slide, root cause analysis, that is a technique for identifying risks. Root cause analysis. First item, the main and true cause of the risk event. And the second one, without the risk cause, the risk wouldn't have occurred. Without the root cause, the risk wouldn't have occurred. Is clear. And the last one in the box, controlling the root cause could eliminate the problem or clear the problem. Okay. Use of the fishbone diagram for identifying risks. There is an example. In this example, from top, social norms, the main arrow or the main part of the fishbone diagram is about aggressive driving. Okay, aggressive drive in this example, and there are some causes about this example from top. Social norms or normals, social norms, including, for example, all do the same, and family approach, for example, the causes, and about driver, about any driver, there are some items like psychological items or psychological characteristics about any driver, and after that economic, and about education, a group of causes in this example. About education, there are some items such as a driving license, and after that public education. And about enforcement, deal with working, enforcement. There are some items such as inflective methods, and insufficient fines or rules in the society. This example is about aggressive drive. So, in this example, or other examples, identify risk output, such as risk register, risk reports, and document updates. Okay. Engineers, any question?
السلام عليكم دكتور.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi Mr. Baho.
Doctor, this material is very good. It's more easy and clear to us.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you for this material, Doctor.
Thank you.
Doctor, but I told you about our present student عقيل حميد عريان is present. رانيا الطالب.
Okay.
أفانين دكتور نجوان عمران.
Yes, yes.
محمد. Yes, دكتور محمد يوسف ياسين. محمد سلمان عبد.
Yes,
أمين طه عبد. They have a problem with my doctor.
Yes, I take them, no problem.
Okay, doctor, thank you.
Thank you very much, our brother, Mr.
You have big heart, doctor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No problem. I take them, no problem. Don't worry. Thank you. And one example for risk register template. We can use these standards or these formats, and we need to change in details in our project, in our risk management. It's an example format. So about risk register template from the left, there are these columns from the left, and in Arabic and Persian language, we must make tables from right to left. Okay, inverse the English. So from the left, the columns are such as in this example, in this format. We can use this format and we can change details about our risk register in our project. From the left, the first column is risk code. There is an internal standard for our project, for our risk management. For example, the codes are such as PD01 or PD1 or FN01 or FN1 and LE1, for example. These are abbreviation in this example. Abbreviation about the categories of risks. And we can make an internal standard in our project, no problem. For example, R1, R2, R3, like last example, if you remember. And the second column is risk event. After that, root causes about any risk. After that, effects of the risk on our project's objectives. After that, the category of risk in our project. I explained. In RBS, risk breakdown structure, for example, PD or FN or LE. These are the categories in our RBS in the risk management, in our risk management. These are categories, abbreviation of categories. And the next column is belonging to effect analysis or impact analysis of risk in items of time, cost, scope, quality, and about qualitative rating of the characteristics of impact or effect and likelihood or probability or likelihood about any risk. And these numbers we explained in next slide is according to an internal standard numbers from 1 to 10, I think. And the next column is confidence level about that risk, and the last one is risk score or risk number by multiplying 5 by 60%, for example. And the next column is belonging to risk level, such as medium, low, medium, high, for example, according the risk score or risk number. And the last column is about response strategy. For example, in the first row about the risk by code of PD1. Risk event is failure to meet the wide age date specified in the contract. And root causes, first one, the process of obtaining the approvals from the relevant governmental authorities in delayed. Bracket, our input is not mentioned. And others items and about the effects of this risk having to rent power or use temporary generators. And these numbers about impact analysis, about qualitative rating, and others are according to internal standard in this example. Okay. And about project risk management process, risk analysis are two steps such as qualitative and quantitative risk analysis we know. And in this example, on top risk analysis, the risk matrix tool is established based on company's risk appetite. It defines the level of risk for risk management by considering its probability and or likelihood against its impact or severity or effect. And every risk is analyzed in terms of the impact on these items. First one, cost, such as bracket in parentheses, such as cost, cost such as budget, expense or costs, reserves, and others. And about time, such as schedule, next one, time, such as schedule, milestones, and deadlines and other items or aspects. And about the scope of the project, such as contract, agreement, variations and other items, and about quality in the project, such as specifications, regulations, and satisfactions and others items. So the second in the next part in this slide, the second element in the risk analysis is its probability of occurrence. And this is the matrix of probability impact. We know it. The left probability are such as in this standard in this project. Very high, the number 9, high 7, moderate 5, low 3, and remote or slightly or very low remote number 1. And about impact or effect in this project. Minor, that is very low, number 1, low 3, moderate 5, high 7, and major or very high 9. And about any risk by multiplying probability to impact or effect, we obtain these numbers in this matrix, and it's clear that from the left bottom to top right, it will increase the risk. So by this row, increase risk from 1 to maximum 81 in this project. And the top boxes or component of this matrix will have the high risks. So about the legend of this matrix risk assessment indices, such as a minor 10% number 1, low 3% number 3, moderate 50% number 5, and high 70% number 7, and major 90% number 9. This internal standard, and we know that internal standard about impact or effect and probability in our project about the risk. We discussed about it. It's an example. Okay. And about this risk register template, we discussed the risk assessment indices, from minor with number 1 to major number 9. This number is according to this standard in this project that we discussed in the before slides. And it's important about risk breakdown structures, types of risk in project management. From the left, 5 or groups or category of risks, and next column is a description and examples about these categories. The types of categories of risk in risk breakdown structure are such as financial risk, schedule risk, quality risk, governance or governmental risk, technical risk, operational risk, market risk, legal risk, and political risk. We can have some other categories, for example, social risk or cultural risk, for example, or official risks. And we can don't have some of these categories. It's according to our decision in our project, and it's according the project managers and stakeholders in our project. We discussed in the last session. Some of the students asked me, and we explained about it. For example, about financial risk or budget risk. Description example is, for example, typically escalation. Excuse me. Typically, escalation of project project cost due to full cost estimating, accuracy, and scope creep, and mistakes in cost estimates. Excuse me, mistakes in cost estimates, bankruptcy, and insurance costs, for example. And about, for example, schedule risk description is risk that activities will take longer than expected in the scheduling of a project. And slippage in a schedule typically increase costs and also delay the receipt of project benefits with the possible loss of competitive advantage. These are about the negative risk, and we can make some categories about positive risk or opportunities separately or with the negative with together by negative risk or threats. Okay. Engineers, any question?
No, Doctor, it's very clear.
Okay, thank you. Next one. These are the risk response strategies. For example, first one, avoidance. Second one, transfer or transferring. Third, mitigate or mitigation. Acceptance. And next one, escalate. And description about this strategy, for example, avoid means eliminate the root cause and thus eliminate the project risk. The strategy of avoidance. And about the strategy of transfer, it's mean transfer the risk to some other part or party of the project. And about the strategy of mitigation means reduce the probability and or impact of risk. About negative risk, and about positive risk is inverse. Increase the probability and or impact of risk. And acceptance leaves action to be determined as needed in case of a risk event. Active acceptance involves allocation of contingency reserves to the project. And about escalate, that is the next or other strategy about risk responses means risk which cannot be monitored and handled by the project are escalated to the upper level. When we cannot to monitor and handle any risk, we must escalate it to the upper level. For example, to program management. Okay. And some examples, for example, about the strategy of avoidance. For example, design change or shutting down a construction site in bad weather, for example. And about the strategy of, one example about the strategy of transferring, for example, insurance purchases or buying insurances, use warranties or guarantees, and sometimes both of them. And next example, subcontracting, use subcontracting and etc. Other examples or activities, and about the strategy of mitigation. That means reduce the probability or impact or effect of the risk, about negative risk, and inverse about positive risk. For example, about negative risk, to reduce risk of injuries, contractor install temporary lighting signs and hand rails. And about the strategy of accept or acceptance. For example, exchange rate fluctuation for imported goods. Exchange rate fluctuation for imported goods. And about the strategy of escalate, for example, lack of workforce for the project, lack of workforce for the project. Okay. And about these two kinds of risk that we explained in last sessions, last lectures. And you make some question about these two kind of risk. Residual risk and secondary risk. These are different. Residual risk is the remaining level of risk. Following or after that, the development and implementation of the risk response strategy. Excuse me. I repeat, about residual risk, this kind of risk is the remaining level of risk. Following after the development and implementation of risk response strategy, about any risk. And the residual risk should always be less than the inherent risk or initial risk. The residual risk should always be less than the inherent or initial risk. Otherwise, there would be no justification for selecting the risk response. I repeat, the residual risk should always be less than the inherent risk. Otherwise, there would be no justification for selecting the risk response. And about secondary risk. Secondary risk is a new risk, not following risk. Residual risk is following risk after implementation of some responses for some risk. But secondary risk is new risk. Secondary risk is a new risk